Good morning. It's Ginny and Tim at DS Tech in Escanaba, Michigan,
Hello.
and we're going to talk about continuous vulnerability management. I called it CVM. What do you think?
Make your
My
own
own
acronyms.
acronym?
Yep.
So I'm going to use the same keyword that we used in the last or the other episode that we recorded, and it's comply. If you need help with your compliance, drop comply. We'll get in touch.
Yes. So, what is continuous vulnerability management? If you hadn't seen the other episodes, you're coming in here fresh. Basically, what it is it used to be very reactionary or quarterly or segmented, where if you as a company wanted to make sure you're meeting all your check boxes for your compliance or for your level of security, you do it at a quarterly basis, maybe a yearly basis. Once a year, you kind of check things, make things going, are buttoned up. But the problem with that is things are moving so fast now, things are changing so quickly that if you wait for the quarter to end or the year to end, there's so much to catch up on and you can get really far behind. And then there's risks involved with that where you may be leaving yourself a backdoor open to, a potential incident if you weren't meeting the security standards that came out and you were waiting every quarter or every year. Um, so what it
Continuous
vulnerability
vulnerability
management.
management.
So what that technically is you basically will look at all the different things on the computer that are outdated, and it's not just the computer, it could be your network, so you got your switches, your IoT devices, printer firmware, the whole nine yards. You're looking at everything in the environment and you're looking to see if you always hear that the 0 day released or there's another thing, Apple has a 0 day on your iPhone. Make sure you update your iPhones. That's the kind of the common one that people think about is their cell phones because
Yeah.
everyone uses that. Well, it's that for your business, and then what you're doing is you're looking at that every day. And then if there ever was a high severity thing, if you're fixing it right that on the spot. You're not waiting till the quarter comes up to where you're fixing things. You're fixing it as it's happening in real time. So you're constantly keeping up with the fixes and the patches and the updates. So that way you're never getting so far behind that you're kind of like you know, asking to be hacked. Basically, you're not
Right?
just waiting for it
Because
like, oh,
it's
we haven't
sitting out
updated
there.
stuff. So the biggest
It's like
one,
leaving a window open or something, right? I mean,
right?
like,
Yeah, you could have like the best security in your house, and you got all these dogs, fences, all this other stuff, but for whatever reason, you just left the back gate open and all the lights on, right? It's like you
yeah,
have one thing in the back that you didn't update or you didn't change, and everything else is good. Well, that one thing can be a hole for them to get into potentially in your network. So they call it proactive risk mitigation. So a lot of IT, it used to be, something breaks, we go fix it. Well, a
hmm
lot of MSPs and IT now, it's about making sure that nothing breaks in the first place. So part of continuous vulnerability management is also making sure that you're constantly updating so that way things don't go down or you have to have all of a sudden an emergency shut everything down to fix it. You're kind of planning for it and you're kind of doing it as it's going, so it's not going to have eliminates the downtime as big. So having the proactive risk mitigation identifies and addresses the vulnerabilities before they're exploited, reducing the attack surface. So you have less holes in your system because you're constantly updating things as it's happening, as they need updating. You got real-time threat response. So cyber threats evolve daily. So using a quarterly approach leaves long windows of exposure. So again, if you
same
had an
thing.
update, a lot of the stuff I talked about, this bullet list here will probably be similar to that, but that's just one of the main reasons why
Mhm.
too is you want to constantly fix it as it's happening, so you're not leaving those open windows for someone to get in. Compliance standards also demand continuous monitoring now. So if you are part of like a
Uh,
HIPAA, CMMC, any of those compliance, they're requiring that you have a continuous vulnerability management system in place, and they want you to prove like how are you doing this, how are you monitoring, how are you looking for it, how are you updating, and then you have to actually prove that you're doing all of that as well. So if you're a client of ours, we do this automatically for you if you're like our VIP tier. And then if you are curious or you want to have something like this or you want to know about compliance, just reach out and we can obviously look at that and set you up.
drop
So
comply.
so even if you don't have a compliance or meeting, but you just like, I just want to make sure all of our stuff's constantly updated, reach out, and then
Yeah.
you're ahead of the game. If you ever did need to meet some sort of compliance framework down the road, you're already doing it. So you're,
Mhm.
you're doing good there. So you avoid breach-driven compliance failures. So again, many compliance violations are only discovered after a breach when it's too late. And then if you were supposed to be doing something in a certain way, like say MFA is supposed to be enabled for everyone, and for whatever reason, these 5 people were like, I don't want to do MFA, so you let them off the hook, and then all of a sudden the attack comes through a phishing email through that user. Your insurance might not even pay it out because you were
Yep.
supposed to have MFA everywhere. So you've got to make sure you have compliance standards for everyone and you have no exceptions. And if there are exceptions, you explicitly make sure it's secured in a way where it can't travel through the network and cause damage if the account ever were to be compromised. Um,
Kind
this,
of like if you get in a car accident, it's your fault, right?
yep,
I mean, it's just the way it
yep,
works.
this is the way it works exactly. By having continuous vulnerability management, you're also addressing 0 days faster, which 0 day means that there's a new vulnerability that just came out that there's no patch for it yet, but people could be exploiting it. But then usually vendors are quick to release patches like within the next day or two to fix that exploit once it's discovered. So by having continuous vulnerability management, you are saying, oh, yep, this is the new thing. We have to patch today, no exceptions, because this is the 0 day that's out. And it will really help keep you up and protected for any of those kind of threats when they emerge. Again, it improves incident response readiness. So a lot of times, and part of this compliance, you'll have like an incident response plan, or if something happens, how should we handle it? And by having continuous vulnerability management, you're constantly looking for that. And so the chances of an actual incident are going down less, and then you're less likely to have to actually go to your incident response plan where all of a sudden it's like we have to take all the systems down for 4 hours to do this major update during production because there's a 0 day versus you're always up on it. So maybe you're patching during your maintenance window at night and you're making sure that you're doing it in the least disruptive way to the business so that way you're not interrupting the actual production or day-to-day operations. Yeah, minimizes operational disruptions was literally the next bullet point. It reduces the unpatched vulnerability window. So typically attackers too, if they get into your system, they're not just going to get into your system or break into your house and stealing everything during the day. If someone breaks into your house, they're going to hide in the basement till nighttime and then try to leave it under cover. So similar attackers may get into your system and they're going to wait till a holiday, a weekend comes or some sort of an event, and then they're going to try to exfiltrate your data or do their damage. So by constantly having this continuous vulnerability management, maybe there was a hole and they're sitting in your systems waiting for that attack, but if you patched it before then they could do that, you've just basically shut the window on them and they're not into your environment anymore. So having the continuous patching going, if something were to be in there, it's going to cut them out because you're constantly closing those doors as they're opening, so there's less threats to get in. Again, you're meeting the third-party consumer expectations, so vendors and customers expect ongoing security diligence where quarterly scans are getting outdated. And any client, if I'm saving my credit card in your systems, I expect that you have a really good security team and you're making sure that my data is safe, so I don't have to continually always get those notices like your account was breached or your information was in one of these things. Make sure you change your passwords or change your credit card number, all that kind of stuff.
So when you're shopping online and they have all those little like symbols that represent like for Better Business Bureau. Or,
oh yeah.
Do they have that for compliance?
I think there might be one. I don't know for sure with the online. I know if you're an online vendor, there's a certain compliance you have to do if you're taking sort of credit card payments. But I think a lot of companies outsource that to a third party because to do that yourself, if you're just a small shop, now you're on the liability if something gets compromised, where you can hire a person that specializes in shopping carts and you hire them to put the shopping cart on your. Exactly. That's okay. Typically where you're going to do. And then,
gotcha.
So that's where I would look is for like a website. If it looks kind of like rinky dink, like what is this weird form I'm putting my stuff into? That's more scary than if you have something that says, we use, Stripe or Shopify or whatever, one of these actual vendors, and they're using that as like an add-on onto their website. To me, that's a little bit more secure because they're using a large vendor that deals with millions of dollars of transactions constantly versus just a small little vendor that may be trying to use, their own proprietary system. So, yeah, and then by having continuous vulnerability management, typically like if you're part of a board or executive confidence, they like to see that you're not just waiting till each quarter presenting the numbers. You can go into your board meetings or your C-level meetings and say that this is what we've done in the past 30 days. We fixed all these things, and our continuous vulnerability management, I know it's a mouthful, I get it is
CVM.
Yeah, CVM. We have reports too, so what'll happen is as we're doing this for you as a company, not only are we fixing things, but we're logging what we fixed in 30-day, 90-day increments, so then you can go to your, a lot of the common questions like, what did you do for us the last 30 days? What are you doing? Because if it's not broken,
they don't see
anything, like you're not responding to anything, you're not fixing it, what is it?
What am I paying for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I can have a report and it's like, in the last 30 days, we fixed these 534 line items through patching, updates, firmware updates. A lot of it may be automatic that we have set up with our system and tools, but we can show the value and what's happening. And so you can take that and show the progress you're doing to auditors, to board levels, to whoever, to show that you're doing a good job with your IT and security. So, and again, reduces the likelihood of dwell time and lateral movement. I was talking about that, where the attacker will break into your house and kind of hide out for a little bit, wait till you leave before they try to leave with the goods. So it's the same thing that, attackers move fast. Waiting months for scans can allow attackers to persist unnoticed on your network. So, we have tons of tools in place too, where we'd see that, ahead of time, even if there was a hole. But we're just talking in general. You're constantly closing those holes as they're happening. So if they were exploiting a certain vulnerability and you're constantly patching, you're only going to have a couple day window where they could potentially be even in there. And then you have all your other layers of security tools to stop them if they were to try to leave with your TV. It's like, well, we got cameras that'll see that. We got the neighbors that'll call the cops, all the different security levels that will help protect that. So, we have alerting with the EDR, the software, the application whitelisting, we have M365 monitoring. There's all the different security tools we have, and they call it the onion layered approach because you can have one giant wall, but if they break through the wall, that's it. Where if you have multiple layers that they have to break through, it's much harder for an attacker to actually get away with the whole bag of goods. So
I do know that our security stack is always growing.
it is. It is.
So-
Yeah. It used to be like, oh, I had an antivirus and two agents on your computer now. Now
An
it's
MFA,
like, yeah, an MFA.
right?
Yeah. It is growing, but it's the best way to stay protected. So, so again, the overall summary of continuous vulnerability management is that it strengthens your overall cyber resilience because organizations that are adopting continuous vulnerability management recover faster and they actually prevent more attacks than those who are just using the outdated every quarter, every yearly scan, that kind of thing. Because even if something were to happen, you're constantly doing it. You won't have to roll back as far. Usually you have advanced logging so you can see exactly where the attackers got in to identify the point you need to restore to, and all those advanced security things will usually come with. If you're doing continuous vulnerability management, you're probably doing a lot of those other things as well. So I guess
Phew.
if you're in a compliance heavy industry and you want to do continuous vulnerability management or know more about
Yeah.
it, obviously just
Drop
reach
your
out to us.
questions, reach
Yes.
out to us, drop comply if you really need help, and we'll get in touch. Ooh, that's a lot.
I know. I had too much coffee this morning, but that's okay.
It's okay. If you just, go back and watch it again
Yep.
or ask questions. So we'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.